hello, and to everybody who's listening. I want to welcome you to the conversation, and I'm now in conversation with Mr. Daniel Blackshields, and Daniel is responsible for the BA, the Honours BA in Economics through Transformational Learning. And I am going to leave it to Daniel to explain what exactly is that. So lovely to see you, Daniel, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Jane. Yeah, there's the question we're always asked. What's different about this? So a relatively new speaking program. We launched it in 2014. The idea behind the true transformational learning bit is, I suppose, we were really, in some ways, anticipating what has ended up with graduate attributes and graduate values in UCC. We really wanted to focus on something much more holistic than just scholarly development, academic development, which is obviously what the university is primarily expert in. And we were looking into the 21st century really and saying, what more do students want? And it's really about students having to kind of create their own career path these days, rather than career paths being made for them. And with that in mind, we really had to start thinking about how do we explicitly build professional development and personal development into the program. So the idea behind putting the with transformational learning into the title itself is really we were nailing our colours to the mast, that this program wasn't just going to focus in on one developmental pillar, that of the academic work in economics, but rather that we were going to explicitly integrate their professional and personal development into the program as well. And the idea being that, or at least what our aspiration is that it's not that they're just going to learn more stuff, more economics, more economic concepts, theories, data collection techniques, but rather they themselves would be the people that would start to recognize, become aware of their changing as young adults, primarily students coming from CAO. We have very few mature students, and that they start to recognize that they're a very different person from when they transition into the university to the one transitioning out, but they're good to go for the graduate market.
So you're obviously focusing on students who have an interest in the first instance, though, in economics. So you're in school, let's say, in wherever you are in the world, and considering economics.
They're primarily interested in economics. Now, economics is still not covered in a majority of secondary schools. So you will have a substantial proportion, about maybe 1/3 of the students that wouldn't have done economics before, but would have a general interest in something called business or something called economics or something called the economy. But we're also then trying to capture people who may want to do something different from what would be classified as the traditional lecture. You know, there are traditional lectures in the program, but it's primarily very student-centered in that we always want the students doing things, engaged in stuff. They're always engaged in problem solving or problem-based learning. There's a lot of I suppose what we might call the flipped classroom approach. The students are doing something, we're really facilitating, as opposed to being the sages on the stage. Mm-hmm. The plan is to be the guides on the side, and that they're learning by doing, and that what we're really doing is acting essentially as mentors. So instead of, let's say, for instance, you take my own modules, so I look after the transition and professional life modules. So instead of, say, learning 12 things about leadership, they actually engage in a project that allows them to articulate what the principles and practices of leadership are. And then they reflect on that. So reflection is a real, is a heavy component of the program. So that's the thing, that's the kind of trying to draw them in as being different. I mean, some students are quite happy who want to be taught in that traditional sense. And these students we tend to find are the ones that just want to do something a little bit different.
It's fascinating that there is an opportunity like that, because I'd imagine if I was listening to this conversation, and if I was somebody who wasn't particularly interested in learning in the traditional way, I would see that you and the team have already given thought to my needs, my learning needs.
That's the idea, and the idea is to try to, as well, while sometimes it may seem somewhat philosophical, the idea is we always try and embed it into the practical. Mm-hmm. So it's about really, okay, how do we transform you into essentially somebody who is ready to be a professional? And that's the key part of it. Now, as part of that as well, again, because of the kind of complexity of the 21st century, you can't really develop professionally unless you're developing personally, unless you're really self-aware, unless you're able to take initiative, be resilient, all of those attributes. So that has to be embedded into the program as well. So we are trying to draw those kind of students in. And the other thing is we've retained the BA, even though we are housed in the Cork University Business School. We've retained the BA because we want to keep a kind of a liberal arts feel to what we do. So in first year, along with 45 credits of economics, they do 15 credits of another art subject. And we wanted to keep that diversity because we want the idea that students kind of in some shape and form have a role in shaping their own learning portfolio. So some students might be interested in psychology. They wouldn't have the opportunity to do that through clubs. Some students want to do a language. Some students want to do computer science. So we want to try and maintain that diversity as well, because otherwise it gives light to the idea of transformational learning, because it's the you that is transforming. So we try to protect that, and we're trying to protect that ethos in the program as well. So we're drawing on people as well who might, they're interested in business, they're interested in economics, but not necessarily the classic finance or banking route. Some people who have, and it's interesting when we start, because we have a few years now of 8 of the alumni, they don't all go to your classic traditional kind of economics jobs. Some of them kind of gravitate more towards management areas or marketing areas or teaching or whatever. And we wanted to leave that diversity develop for them. So that's kind of the aim behind the program.
So we'll come back to the graduates now in a while, because I'd be interested to hear from you, give examples of jobs that they have, but we'll come to that towards the end, because let's go on the journey now for a moment. It's CK212. So presumably all details relating to how you apply are in our the book of modules and the prospectus. How long does the degree take?
Students can do it either as a 3 or 4 year program. So if it's a 3-year program, they're staying in UCC for that 3 years. If they can take the option, we have an international pathway. So some students may want to, we get about, again, maybe about a third of students want to study abroad for a year. So they're allowed, they can do that, and then they come back and they finish in 4th year. So we have those 2 options. So primarily, the vast majority of students would take it as a 3-year program, but about a 1/3 take it as a 4-year program with that studying abroad option.
And what kind of research in the School of Economics informs the economic element of the curriculum?
So economics in UCC, the kind of what we used to call the Cork tradition is unusual in a European context. In a lot of the European context, economics is heavily quantitative. The idea has always been more theoretical. The greatest strengths at the moment, number one, we don't really focus in on any particular area, but I'd say one of the things that many staff are gravitating towards is a thing called behavioral economics. And behavioral economics is a combination of economics and psychology, essentially. And a lot of what we do in our program is informed by the tenets of behavioral economics, I suppose, in principle. Other than that, however, there isn't any kind of one way to do economics. And we try to encourage that diversity in the staff as well. So you'll have what we call schools of thought in economics, because again, the idea is to try and get students to experience these different perspectives, that there isn't a one answer. Are there other schools of thought explored? Yes.
Okay. And is this degree unique in the Irish system?
We think it is for 2 reasons as an undergraduate program in economics. One, because of the explicit focus as part of the curriculum in the employability type modules, as it were. And then the other thing is, to the best of our knowledge, we're still the only undergraduate economics program in Ireland that has a dissertation. The students do an undergraduate dissertation in 3rd year. And myself and my co-program director, Dr. Ella Kavanagh, have really tried to defend the need, even though it is very resource intensive to have an undergraduate dissertation, to defend the need that is an integral part of the program. It must be the capstone, because again, what we want at the end of the 3 or 4 years in a transformational program is that students find their own voice, and in an academic sense, the way to find your own voice with dissertation. So we believe, to the best of our knowledge, that is still the case, that we're the only economics program that has that at undergrad level.
And whether you pursue the 3-year or the 4-year option, you'll have the dissertation.
So what we do is in second year, we start you off and you get working on a research proposal. And then either in third year or fourth year, you are allocated a supervisor, and you work on kind of going from the research proposal to a finished 1,000-word piece by the end of your final year. Your capstone project, essentially.
You're very much geared towards the world-ready graduate, work-ready and world-ready. So in a sense, you've already incorporated employability skills into the curriculum. So you focus on maybe a curricular approach to
Yes.
giving the student the employability skills.
Very much so, yes. Very embedded into it, and the idea from the start again, and it's weird. Economics is an odd discipline in that it's not a profession. So there's very few people get employed as an economist per se. And so one of the things we certainly found, and this would be particularly the case with our, say, traditional arts students, is they weren't quite sure what it is they could do. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to show them how, what they were doing in economics is applicable in all settings, but they also needed these other competencies, these professional competencies, to be able to show that off. And again, we've been fortunate from our other experiences and other programs where, we're able to listen to industry, and industry talk about the need for students to have much more lived experience of collaborating, much more lived experience of professional oral communication, much more lived experience of taking leadership roles. And what we wanted to do is, rather than leave that to chance, and where again, when you leave things to chance, the confident student, the most engaged student will always find a way. Can we bring in as many students as possible with us? So from day one, for instance, in their very second week in the program, they are immediately thrown into a professional oral communication project straight away, which is they have to do a presentation for the open day for students. So they're immediately given a real life setting, and they're graded essentially by myself and somebody from the careers office. And they're given the idea they have to present themselves professionally. We go from top to tail, essentially, and we're getting them into the mindset from day one of, yes, using economics, but how would you translate that to a professional setting? So from day one, yes, what we've done is, again, when we were working on the design of this program, we canvassed career services, we canvassed some local businesses, and they kind of gave us a suite of what they felt were the key professional competencies. So they are oral professional communication and oral written communication, problem solving, project management, leadership, followership, and collaboration. And what we do from day one in the first year is we work on those. They're the themes for first year, which they then develop in more detail in second year and again in third year. And the idea is to try and make it as authentic as possible. So it's co-designed. It's myself from the economics perspective, but always somebody with careers in the room with me. And also we have a number of what we call program sponsors or program champions, local businesses. And normally we'll have a representative come in as well. So if they're doing something on leadership, they might have something from three perspectives: the academic, the careers, and the industry perspective.
That's so informative.
That's the idea. And the other idea we try to show them is to get out of black and white thinking, that there is one way to do things. So what we want them to see is the dialogue between three different perspectives: the academic perspective, the careers perspective, the industry perspective, and to get them to see that that's okay, that's actually life. Most life is about wicked problems or unstructured problems. So what we get them to do, for instance, in first year, they're kind of what we call a culminating performance. And we use the language very deliberately. So we use the language of performances, and that they're performing. And their culminating performance in first year is the mock-up of a group project in an assessment center, a graduate assessment center, where we get about 8 to 10 companies to come in. The students are in groups. Each student is allocated a company as a client. Each student is given a problem that the client gives them on the day. They have an hour to work on that with a mentor. And then they come back and they have to present to the clients and everybody else. And we normally do that. It'll be different this year, but we normally do that in the student center. So it's a big auditorium, and the students have to stand up and they have to present their case to each one of the businesses. So the idea is to try and create lived experience. In second year, we move out of the university. So along with one of their tasks is to interview people at the employer's open day, and they have to do what's called an informational interview. What type of people do you hire? What's your interview process, and so on and so forth. So informing them as second years. And then after Christmas, and again, it'll be different this year, it'll be online, but we normally, again, our clients, our businesses will give them a problem, and the students have to work on the problem, and then they go to the head office in Dublin or Cork, and they present to people in the company themselves. Very professionally, they all have to be suited and booted, so they're essentially doing a professional problem-solving exercise. And then in third year, what we call the, I suppose we have a metaphor we use. In first year, it's called submerging. In second year, we call it submerged. And then in third year, we call it re-emerging. On third year, and all my third years have now just done it with me, they have a role-playing professional interview. We give them a job that they're going to apply for in UCC. I do the proper mock-up, HR, the whole lot. They have an interview with me. They have to submit their CVs. I screen them. I tell them whether I would have screened them or not, whether they would have been shortlisted or not, and why. They do an interview with me. We get feedback on everything in the interview process. And then normally what will happen, although again this year has been a bit different, is our employers will also do a role-play interview with them, but in the employer's organization. So again, that idea of making it feel real. So the students have to go and they have to find the company. They have to wait in the waiting room. They have to do all things that they will be doing for real anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then after Christmas, we do a half-day assessment center with them. And again, we bring people in, normally from people like EY are normally very good to us. And they'll come in with people. And we have some people who come down from UL to help us as well. And we do a mock-up assessment center, full half-day. And we essentially tell students how they would get on if this was a real assessment center.
The whole thing sounds fascinating and well thought through, obviously, Daniel. But you mentioned companies and your industry partners very often. They seem to be very, very key. And the relationship that you have built up, you and your team, is very important. And you mentioned EY. What other companies are you involved with?
Musgrave have been fabulous to us. Siobhan Scanlon there, who's the head of kind of recruitment graduates, is fabulous. And she works with all the years, the first year, second and third years. Bank of Ireland has worked with us, Lidl and Aldi, Glanbia, Citgo, KPMG. And so, I mean, the more people we can get involved, the more diversity, the better. Because again, one of the things that we want our students to be able to see is that the opportunities are quite diverse. They don't have to think about necessarily the big four. There's much more out there than that. And so the more people we can get in to work with us, the more the experience always is going to be fresh for us, because people will always bring something different to the table that we wouldn't have thought of, you know, and that's really important for us as well, to try and keep things fresh. So we're always delighted. And we've been, I mean, I wouldn't have thought it, I suppose, before I started working in this program, designing this program, I wouldn't have thought that the industry would be so welcoming, but they've been fantastic since the start. I've been really bowled over by how enthusiastic companies are to work with us and give us up so much time. So it's not like we get them to come in and do a lecture. I mean, we have to think through what they're going to do with the students for 2 or 3 hours on a Friday. And then we have people taking half a day off to do something on problem solving with us.
I think the basis of all that is relationships, when bi-directional and mutually beneficial, and co-creation is always an exciting space to be in, isn't it?
It is, and also that if they trust that we're going to kind of, and it's the same with the career service. When the career service have an idea, well, let's throw it out, let's see what happens, let's go. I mean, a lot of what we do, because by the very nature, because the industry is moving so quickly, and the kind of competencies that are needed are moving. There's no point in you kind of being wedded to your way. So if there's experiments to have improvisation, the idea of just freeing up a space for yourself to experiment and try, and that this is an environment that will challenge you to try, but it's safe to go with it, you know. And so, and without the industry's involvement, it wouldn't be what it is. It couldn't be, because they're bringing to the table something that we don't have any kind of a real feel for. We might intellectually know some of these things,
Yeah.
But it's very different from being on the ground.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about it. So you don't probably have a work placement per se.
No, we don't have a workplace. We went this approach instead. And we went the approach of, can we get employers involved all the time? And that's and that's thankfully so far worked.
And what other, we call it extracurricular opportunities are there for the students? So you have the curriculum, and clearly they get a lot of experience and a lot of connections and so on. Well, what other things can they get involved in UCC?
By its very nature, we're heavily involved with the Economic Society, so that's a student-run society.
Okay.
We strongly encourage students not only to be members, but to go for committeeships on that, to again gain experience in leading and in collaborating and communicating. We strongly encourage all of our students to be involved in the peer programs, the peer support programs. So we've had a number of students get involved in that, because again, one of our ideas is that we want our third years to be able to be in a position to mentor our first years and to kind of create that identity across all years of the program. And that in many ways, the best advertisements for the first years is our third years, and whether what we say in first year is actually the case when they see these third years. So our idea is to get our students act as mentors in some of these big projects with our first and second years. Other than that, bar always encouraging them to get involved in societies and clubs, and also in terms of, so again, I'm the teaching fellow for reflective practice, and I get them to, rather than seeing something like, say, their part-time work as being something separate, as actually seeing, well, actually, you're just one person. So how can you integrate what you're learning in your job to what you're doing here? And we get them to do reflective pieces on how they're integrating their life. So the key opportunity, I suppose, that the ones that we have direct links to are things like the Economic Society, the Entrepreneurship Society. We're trying to get links to the Consulting Society, which is a new society that's kind of set up in UCC. It's really intriguing, because again, a lot of our students are interested in the whole area of consulting. And then the other one that we do push quite a lot is the year abroad. We're trying to encourage as many people as possible to experience university and life in another country for a year, because of its immeasurable in terms of personal development.
I think it's very important to promote that, because we do hear from our students quite often that it's not really on their radar, that it's not solidly on their radar, the opportunities that we do provide in UCC for students to spend significant time in partner institutions across Europe and around the world. I'm interested in, are there any myths associated with the profession? Are those working as economists that you'd like to dispel? This is your opportunity.
The biggest myth, and the myth that concerns me the most, is that it is, for want of a better word, a masculine discipline. And that's a very dangerous one. So if you think I do this thing with first years, where I get them to draw a picture of what an economist looks like. And invariably, male, white, middle-aged, balding, and I'm kind of sounding a bit like me now at this stage. But what worries me about that is oftentimes that's females drawing that as well. And I'm really concerned about what that models in terms of what a female thinks, that what jobs are open to them. And in the world of finance and in the world of banking, that can seem like a very male-centric discipline. And again, if you look at some of the, if you go onto the popular culture, again, it's very hard to name a significant or prominent female economist. And I think that's a great myth that keeps on getting recycled. And it worries me greatly. It worries me as obviously, whatever, at least 50% of the population are female. It also worries me as a dad of a daughter. And that we want to try and ensure that it's not the case that it's male-centric. And in fact, actually, the more diversity of experience that we have in the discipline, the more vital the discipline becomes.
So looking there for our final few minutes, Daniel, if you think of those who have graduated, the students that have gone through the course in UCC, pursue this as a degree option, What sort of roles are they now in? You alluded to it at the beginning of the conversation, and now we just we loop it right back.
Very, very diverse, which is great. Again, and much more diverse than I would have ever expected. We do have a few junior economists. So we've got there's a female who graduated last year who's just become a junior economist in Sherry Fitzgerald, which is fabulous. We have people working in the Central Statistics Office. We have people who have gotten jobs in EY, KPMG, Bank of Ireland, and then for those people that were so inclined and wanted to go that way, we now have people working in Gambia, Musgrave. We have people working in teaching. We have one student that's gone off and become a guard. But again, the idea behind that is it was something that he wanted to pursue, but never felt he should. And what he felt he got out of the 3 or 4 years with us, he was with us, was permission to really think about that and take his own path. So it's been really diverse. We've been delighted that some of the top 50 companies in the country seem to be employing our graduates, which is great. And again, locally, as I said, in companies like Musgrave, they have taken some of our graduates. Now, our first lot of graduates was only in 2017, so we only have a few years.
It's very new, so.
We launched the program in 2014, so our first 23 graduates in 2017.
Okay.
And about half of the students do go on and do a postgraduate, not necessarily in economics, some in finance, some in marketing and management. Some have gone up to different business schools in the country as well. So about half go on and do postgrad, and then the rest are in the world of work.
So Daniel, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you and hearing about this. It's a very, very interesting degree. And as you said, it's tailored to individuals who are interested in learning in a different way, but it's so relevant to the world in which they will be employed down the line. Just to wish you continued success, and to anybody who's listening to us, to say that it's CK212, a BA in economics through transformational learning. And Daniel Blackshear, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you very much.
Employability and career development initiatives are delivered through curricular, co-curricular and extracurricular activities. Over 90% of our programs offer placements internationally and nationally. Throughout your time in UCC, you will have the opportunity to develop employability skills through entrepreneurship modules, skill sessions and memberships of clubs, societies, becoming a class representative and getting involved. Throughout your student journey, UCC Career Services will support your career planning with one-to-one career consultations and coaching. The Career Services collaborate with academic departments and other UCC units to deliver bespoke and standalone employability and career-related workshops and events for all students and recent graduates. Our annual recruitment fair is one of the largest national career fairs, featuring up to 100 top graduate employers. For more information about UCC employability initiatives and the career services, visit ucc.ie/careers.